Hey YouTube, hope you guys are all doing well. Welcome to my channel if you're new here. So today I wanted to talk about thumbnails. I think they're a very important part of art. I think it's important to share what I know about thumbnails, as it's like the first piece, the first part of whatever design or project you're working on. And it's often overlooked as like a very people don't really spend a lot of time with the thumbnail, which is important. And the reason why thumbnails are important is because, when you work on a thumbnail, you're getting the idea down on paper, and you're understanding, is the idea understandable with like very little value, right? With just like very few details, right? With only like 3 or 5 different values. But yeah, with like very few details, is the idea readable? Do you understand what the piece is about with just like very few details, right? That's an important thing. Like a tip I would give for doing that is, you want like 3 to 5 values, of course, and focus very much on like idea generation, and don't worry too much about all the details. You want to jump from one idea to another, and it should be obvious like what it's about. And you definitely want to be able to you want one idea to piggyback off of another, because oftentimes, you come up with one idea, you do a thumbnail for it, and then you think of another idea, and then you combine the two ideas. Now you have now you have like ideas, they blend together. You want to just go through, you want to just flow with the process, right? You want to think about just focusing on the ideas and not so much like anatomy. You don't want to think about the values just yet, not too much. Just think of like just think of the idea. You just want to just focus on the idea only, and then not so much about anything else. Don't think about like composition, anatomy, color theory, things like that. Don't bother. You want to keep them small and loose, no need to stress too much about this, and no need for like judgment or anything. There's no such thing as a bad idea, so no need to worry about that. And of course, keep in mind, like you can always use references, right? References are always great for like coming up with ideas. So you want to keep on with that process, and an important thing to consider is like, are you on a deadline of some sort? Because if you are on a deadline, then then it's important to keep note that you don't really have all the time in the world. So focus very much on like maybe spending an hour on on thumbnail generation, and then the rest is just you know rendering whatever idea you came up with. But if you're just like kind of doing this for fun on your own, then you don't really need to worry about that. So you might as well just like take your time, right? So really gotta ask yourself, are you in a rush? If you're not in a rush, then why not just take your time, right? And yeah, now that I've like sat down for a little bit, I'm able to kind of think about I'm able to think about like the general topic of what I want. And I'm thinking like, okay, I definitely want this creature to have a lot of limbs. Or like a fusion of like different animals, maybe even use insects of some sort, right? Because like I don't know, maybe like a dragon that is kind of like a centipede as well, right? That would be horrifying. Imagine that. uh or imagine like a praying mantis of some sort, but like the size of an eagle, and like maybe has like wings, so like it can fly like a, I don't know, like a wyvern or something, or a dragon. Like that's pretty terrifying. I think that's what I really want to create. um Not too sure yet. Again, like I don't really need to invest too much on each idea. I just need to like get them all on paper, and they don't even need to look good in some way. um I don't need to, not at least not yet, right? The whole point is just to kind of get the idea down on paper, and then once I do, I can finally think about like rendering it out. And oftentimes a good idea is to go outside. Actually, you might be able to get some ideas outside. um like not everything should be come up with in the confines of your home, on a sketch pad where you're kind of like keeping your head down and not really thinking about anything else much. Yeah, but like the whole point of this is to just make sure we come up with different ideas, and just keep on generating ideas, right? Yeah, that's also why it's quite important to do this. Now, one thing I want to know is, like, you see me here, like I kind of went a little big. That's when I want to like go back down. You don't want to make the thumbnails too big, because if you do, then you run into a problem where like now you're able to focus on like the tiny details and whatnot, and that's actually not good. You want to just focus on like tiny thumbnails. The whole point of it is to prevent you from, thinking about the tiny details and whatnot, because you want to focus on like just the idea, right? Just the idea. And this is quite important to do. I'm actually wondering, like, how many eyes do spiders have, and how much of an advantage is it? Because, like, there's so many questions now. Like, see, this is a good thing. Like, you should be like thinking about things and asking yourself questions, right? Um, uh, yeah, like I already lost my train of thought of what I was talking about before. Um, yeah, like overcommitting, you definitely don't want to overcommit, and this is why, like, thumbnails are such an important concept, such an important step of the design process, right? Because, you know, thumbnails means, you get to have fun with just the brainstorming process of things, right? That's super important. And um, I'm still deciding, like, what kind of a fusion of characters should it be? Like, like, okay, so why do I want like so many limbs? Things like that, right? And I'm just like creating boxes to force myself to think only about the idea. Um, but yeah. Another idea I just came up with right now is maybe I want some of the legs of whatever creature this is, right? I mean, like, if there's going to be multiple limbs, I might as well have the limbs, like, have different features. Like, some of them could be claws, right? Or like hooks, things like that. And some of them, could just be regular limbs. Um, but yeah, I'm just like generating ideas like this, and like, I'm not really confined to any one idea. And I would say, like, a good tip that I would have is, like, when you're coming up with ideas, I mean, it's okay to use references, but I would also be extremely careful, right? You want to be careful with the using references, because, like, it's very easy for whatever you come up with to kind of be a fusion of other people's ideas. And we want to be careful with, like, not using, we don't want like we don't want something to be too close to someone else's idea. But yeah, the important thing is to enjoy and have fun, right? Alright, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, good. And another thing to keep note is, it's a good idea to, like, give yourself some, so you can write things down, like, you can write things down. It's perfectly okay. Like, that's part of the idea, the thumbnail process, it's perfectly okay to write things down, and then maybe some notes. You know, you can put down, like, I don't know how many eyes, or how many claws, or things like that, right? Putting notes for yourself is a good idea. I don't think like it needs to be just drawing. Like I think it's perfectly okay to write. Really, it depends. It's up to you and like whatever works for you, right? So now what I'm really starting to come up with is like a spider-like creature that has wings, right? Has wings like a kind of like a dragonfly, right? And but also has the scorpion tail. So that's pretty terrifying, depending on the size of it as well, right? Um, I guess that's really what I'm going for. I'm going for like a horror kind of creature. I don't know if it's working. So as you can kind of tell, I'm already I kind of already decided on like what is it exactly that I want to draw, and now I'm like kind of ready to kind of commit, but kind of not so much. Like I understand like clearly it's gonna be a creature of some sort where it's like based on a spider, but you know, a fusion of other insects possibly. So like there's gonna be a spider, maybe a praying mantis, right? Maybe. Or, you know, maybe on from a dragonfly or, you know, a different kind of animal like, you know, a scorpion, right? But it looks like, you know, I'm sticking to the spider idea, right? And that's okay. I'm like half committed at this point. So now I'm kind of like done with thumbnails. And, you know, well, I'm still creating thumbnails maybe like a little bigger, of course, right? But I'm still thinking about ideas. That's the important thing. Still thinking about ideas, right? So yeah, I hope you guys liked the video. I think I'm gonna leave it off here. You know, let me know what you guys think. I hope it was educational for you guys. Hope you guys learned something from this. Um, Let me know what you guys think. Like and subscribe. Comment if you have any suggestions, of course, right? And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks. Bye.